Welcoming Week 2023 is here. Today, you're going to listen and watch Welcoming Week podcast series. And the goal of the series is to help newcomer and resident know about the services we have here in Grey & Bruce, help newcomer get access of the services, establish themselves, and call Grey & Bruce as their home. My name is Deepika Gupta, Manager Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, and the program is funded by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. Let's get into the conversation.
Hi, I'm May Ip, and I'm the coordinator of Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership. In this podcast, we're going to explore how being welcoming can benefit the economic development of the Grey & Bruce region. And today, our guests are Jacinda Rudolph from Grey County, and she's the Economic Development Officer. And then we have her counterpart from Bruce County, Economic Development Officer from Bruce County, Pierre Valley. Okay, so welcome. And so I have some questions for you. And I think what we're going to do is I'll ask a question and then each of you answer. And then we just continue the conversation this way, okay? So the first question I have is, tell us about your work as Economic Development Officer in the area of newcomer attraction and retention. So would you like to start, Pierre?
Sure, yeah. So within economic development within Bruce County, have been involved with the Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership for about a year and a half now. And we've been involved with all facets of supporting the initiative itself. And it really leads into a lot of other areas as well in regards to supporting other community organizations, such as Welcoming Community Grey Bruce, YMCA Settlement Services, and really working to support those organizations to help them meet their goals and their initiatives.
Mm-hmm. And I know that a while ago, Business to Bruce also have a mini series focusing on attraction and retention of newcomer. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a mini-series that was focused towards employers to raise awareness about newcomers and the immigration process. There's different programs with different levels of government between federal and provincial government, and the different programs could be a little challenging to understand because there are so many different options out there. And so the webinar series was really focused on spreading that awareness to the employers to help them to understand or learn the different options that were available to them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Pierre. And Jacinda?
So I think I started through a provincially funded project called New to Grey, and that's how Grey County first, I would say, got involved initially with that funding. And New to Grey was really around, as Pierre kind of mentioned, raising awareness of the value that newcomers bring to a rural community, and especially for employers, and how we can set the foundation to be able to build a welcoming community where newcomers will not only just come, but stay in the region. So it really was a focus on retention, and it continues to be a focus on retention. But it was kind of the initial point where the county got involved in newcomer attraction and retention. And that was in 2017, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good lead into our second question. So our second question is, from your perspective as an economic development officer, what does a welcoming community look like? A very broad question, right?
It is, yeah.
It definitely, and it looks different to different people. Mm-hmm. Everybody has different expectations, different understandings, and so I think that's part of what we do with economic development and the support of different programs and initiatives is how do we bridge the gap between a person's thoughts or expectations or hopes and with the reality of what is available out there to them. And if it isn't available, how do we help get that service or that amenity to them in that nature.
And yeah, there are so many different aspects to what a welcoming community looks like. I think having worked in a settlement organization Nova Scotia in the past, it really is around being able to see yourself as a newcomer in the leadership roles that currently exist within your community. So whether it's decision makers, whether it's a county council or municipal council, or a CAO or a supervisor, that is really part of that welcoming community. It's not just the workplace. It's not just the community, it's also the workplace. And also, I think Pierre and I talked about this before, and maybe Pierre, you can bring up, the analogy that you mentioned around, being at the table or.
Yeah, it's kind of that the analogy of you can be invited to the table but maybe not part of the conversation. Then you can be at the table and being part of the conversation, and then another analogy is being at the table and leading the conversation. And I think when you can get to the point of being part of the conversation and leading the conversation, you're actually included in what's happening. You're not a cursory look from the outside.
Yeah, and newcomers being valued as a community member is really important. It not only is important for retention, but it's also important for that individual to be able to consider whether they want to raise their family here, whether they want to, be involved in the community. And when they feel valued, when a newcomer feels valued, then they do stay. And it does contribute to the community and also contributes to the economy as a whole. Yeah.
So that is very true. I think from what both of you said, I see getting them here, opening a business, for example, or landing on jobs is not the only thing, right? So they have to feel belong. And as we all know that for somebody to feel totally settled and integrated, there's the economic integration, social and civic integration. So from what you said, is really encompass everything, right? So your role as an economic development officers, so how do you bring in the other? So obviously you're on economic development. So, but how do you link that to the social and the civic integration part?
I would say that getting a job for a newcomer is just one piece of the puzzle, and so you mentioned the full picture. Getting a job is great, but being able to, as an economic development officer, being able to raise awareness around the value of diversifying your workplace and or diversifying your community is really important. There's a lot of benefits to having newcomers in the region. They bring creative ideas. They bring new ideas. Newcomers also contribute with their culture. Newcomers contribute with the way perspectives. I feel are really important. And when you have different perspectives, you have a whole picture. And so if we can help our employers and businesses to be able to, understand the value of diversifying their workforce and what that means, I think we have, we've moved that momentum in reaching that welcoming community as well as welcoming workplace.
And I think it's through removing barriers, helping the employers and or the new residents to the area. A newcomer may move to the area and they have a master of multiple different languages, but maybe English they haven't mastered. So how do we help remove that barrier for the person coming to the area? And there's so many different things. It might be credential recognition, anything that's going to help that person feel that Grey and Bruce County are home. that's a barrier to them. So we've got to remove those as best we can so that they look at this place as their home.
Well, and being able to help, whether it's an employer or a business organization, identify what those barriers are, because you may not know what those barriers are. And so the language is a perfect point. We're not going to offer language courses, like we in economic development is not going to offer language courses, but being able to identify that you want to be able, if an employer wants to retain the staff they have, and maybe that staff is a newcomer, then maybe considering that they could offer language classes as part of their paid workday once a week to be able to help the newcomer integrate into their community and workplace. And then that becomes, there's a trickle effect. There's like, once you do that, then that individual may then participate in workplace initiatives or team building. They can play a more active role. Once they do that, then they can make those connections and show their value, and then they can maybe get a better job within their organization and move up the ladder. And as you do that, that retention role just comes into place. So we may not offer language courses, but we are going to hopefully, and we try to identify what some of those barriers are. So then employers can brainstorm on their own even and think, okay, well, if these are some of the barriers, how can we help reduce those barriers to then encourage newcomers to integrate into their workplace as well as their community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Hard to add to that, to be honest with you.
But both of you presented some wonderful examples, right? So for making newcomers feel welcoming, to welcome newcomers and making them feel belong. So then that again is smoothly lead into our third question. So how will being welcoming benefits the economic development of Grey Bruce? So what is the, first of all, what is the ultimate goal of economic development? So what do we want to achieve ultimately?
So I guess I'll start with that. So my focus within economic development is on workforce development, and the Stratford Bruce economic region has been the lowest unemployment or one of the lowest unemployment rate areas in Ontario for the past 15 years. So with that, the goal, one of the continuous goals I have to work towards is how do we help our employers meet their business needs by having a skilled workforce here in our area. So that's all entailing of attraction, retention, skills building, data gathering, all of those different elements. And by having a welcoming community, it helps with the attraction of bringing people to our area. It helps with the retention of when people do move to the area, that they feel that this is now their new home and they don't want to leave. And then it has its kind of cascading economic benefits because now we're filling those needed areas in our with our local businesses.
Good answer, Pierre. It really, it's there's so many pieces to that, and that filling that labor shortage is one big obvious piece, I guess, to building your economy. When I think of economic development, and sometimes it's hard to be able to define economic development. We have videos where we're just defining economic development, so now we're putting economic development and the benefit of having a welcoming community. So the skilled labor shortage is one piece, but how do you get like a thriving community? And when we talk about welcoming community, sometimes people think it's just community-based, just within your community, at home, on the street, and so on. But it is, the big piece is also the workplace as well. So workplace and social life. So if a community is welcoming, that means that there's not only the workplace, it's also on the street. It also means in the education system. It means at school for their children. It means walking down the street and feeling safe. And when you feel safe and you feel a part of that community, you thrive as an individual. I think you thrive as an individual, and you can thrive within your community. It, like you said, again, ripple effect. You know, if you're happy in your community, if you feel welcomed, if you can see yourself in the leadership roles that surround you, if you can see yourself in information resources, you feel like you belong. And when you feel like you belong, your output is positive. And when your output is positive, that then goes to your workplace, and that is spread that way as well. So it's kind of a roundabout way of talking about welcoming communities, but it is the whole picture.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to kind of sum up is that when we look at a newcomer coming into the community, we look at that person as a whole person, right? So it's not just filling out a position that has been empty for a long time, but it's all the needs, right? All the needs, but at the same time is looking at how this person can contribute, encourage, build their capacity to contribute as well. So then there's that reciprocal relationship, and keep building on that, and that person can eventually be integrated into the community as part of a leader, a supporter, everything, right? So I think we all do that. At different time, we are more a leader. Another time, we are more a supporter for different people. So it's really, like you say, it's very hard to explain, but it is all there when we look at it from a higher picture, to look at the whole person, the connection that each and everyone, not just newcomers, but everybody in the community make, like the web that they make in connecting with others, right?
Yes,
So
yeah, and being able to help make those connections we don't, with Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, we don't work directly with newcomers, but we build the capacity and knowledge and awareness of the people that do welcome them into their space, do welcome newcomers into their workplace. So we're often a supportive role. It's often connection and support. And we really do live in a global world. And when I think of, diversifying your community, your rural community, or your workplace, it does contribute to that global perspective. And so if we want to thrive within our economic world, we have to consider all perspectives to be able to feed into that global world. Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks, Pierre.
And especially, I think we all know that we have, in the past few years, we're seeing more and more immigrants or newcomers coming up from the urban areas, because they love this area. They want to settle in. And then with this the diversifying culture, we really do need the infrastructure to be more inclusive in order to make everybody feel at home, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the welcoming infrastructure is really important. We are a rural community, and it's hard sometimes when things are unknown, and unfamiliar. It's hard to navigate, and so the more you are exposed, the more you experience other cultures or people that come from other cultures, the more you open up your own kind of vision of what familiarity looks like. And when it becomes if a welcoming community can become that norm, that, a diverse world, a diverse community, a diverse rural community, it becomes almost, second nature to welcome someone. And it becomes not an afterthought, an automatic process, I guess.
It's almost like a reflex, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not a rigid response to it. Mm-hmm. It's more in flux, I guess.
Yes, and familiar. And the more familiar we are with, the more familiar I am with other cultures, the more welcoming I am. So how do we implement that into a community.
And I, did you want to say something?
No, I'm
okay.
good.
I thought you would. And I personally feel that embracing cultural diversity enrich my life. I feel happy to learn about different diverse things, and I think it is just that that fulfillment that people here too are looking at as well, right? So when we have that attitude and being ready to accept newcomers in the community, like you say, Pierre, before, if they feel the sense of belongingness, they feel welcome, then they will want to stay and contribute. Well, they're already contributing, but they will want to stay and continue to be part of the community economically as well, right?
Yeah, and it's you mentioned it earlier, Jacinda. Many times you don't know what you don't know, and that leads into making assumptions, making a thought or a guess that might not be accurate. And I think by the more diverse experiences that a person has, it kind of opens up their awareness as to what actually is out there, because it's easy to almost get stuck in a rut because this is what you think you know or what you've been exposed to, and the reality might be something completely different. Yeah, that's getting pretty philosophical when we get into a conversation like that, but the reality is the more awareness that we can bring about the different cultures, backgrounds, understandings, beliefs, I think it enriches everybody to, again, really be part of that conversation, to have a fruitful conversation.
Just like you mentioned earlier, you can invite somebody to the table, but they may not be included, and then they can be included in the conversation, but just as a follower, no opportunity for them to lead. Or you can fully engage them so that their voice can be the direction, give direction as to how we can become more welcoming, right? So I think it's just that. Then is it correct for me to say that part of your job as economic development officers is to create that platform for the newcomer voices being heard or being understood by employers or by the community at large, so that you can kind of close that gap?
It's interesting because we had this conversation a little earlier. It's how do you help a person realize or visualize that they're part of the community? And that can be done through marketing materials. It could be done through inclusive events. It could be done through making awareness with employers, different practices that might help them with their hiring practices or their accommodations. And really kind of trying to open up that door to the conversation to say, this is an option, and it's something to be explored in that nature.
Well said. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. Not philosophical at all. Okay, so my final question here is, what are some examples of work that you did in the past or are doing that help make Grey Bruce more welcoming? Everything, right? Basically.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I did already talk about the New to Grey project. I think it takes other voices to be able to propel initiatives forward, and working with the community, working with Welcoming Communities Grey Bruce when a few years back, working with Making Grey Bruce Home project. We started kind of those connections and those initiatives, those group conversations, to be able to make sure that those voices and those issues are raised at different not only just different levels of government, but also different organizations within the region. Also realizing working, Grey County and Bruce County working together in economic development is really important because we are a region, and one person might live here and live in Grey County and work in Bruce County, and vice versa. So, whether it was specific initiatives or collaborative partnerships, that is what economic development always does, and we have to be able to share resources. We are a rural community, so sharing resources and working collaboratively is really important to whatever initiative we do. So it's not necessarily what we have done in the past, but it's what we've done in the past and continued that momentum forward. And Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership is really one of those ongoing initiatives that shows collaboration, that shows connection and communication. And then, being able to work with settlement services, that's really important because they work directly with newcomers. So economic development supporting GBLIP is really around that support for businesses, organizations, and also community members to be able to build their knowledge and their capacity to be a welcoming space, whether it's in their work environment or if it's on the street, or welcoming a newcomer into their business. That kind of answered the question, but not really.
No, that was great. Grey and Bruce are very unique to any of the places I've lived in across Ontario. It's sparsely populated by comparison to a large city center. There's geographical distances that make different challenges in itself, which also aid to its beauty as well. But what I've found here in this area is there's such a sense of community between organizations and people out there working within the communities that I've never seen anywhere else. And almost any initiative that you're involved with, and it could be a job fair, it could be a welcoming event or a cultural event, people come together here in a different way. And so the way the question, when I looked at it in advance, it said, what did you do in the past? And I'll be quite honest with you, it's hard for me to say that I've done anything. As a community, people have come together to support all of these different events. And it's not always the same people, not always the same community members, but you could go to pretty much any meeting or planning exercise or discussion, and there's between 50 to 75% of either the same people and or organizations at every meeting, but it's always a different group of that 50 to 75%, no matter what the initiative is out there. Could it be supporting the schools? It could be supporting a community event. It's always rotating. So it's really the sparse population in a rural area that's geographically kind of spread apart has actually pulled people together in a different way than what I've seen in large city centers. That's just been my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I share your experience because I feel the same way too in my previous projects and right now as the GBLIP coordinator. I just feel all the stakeholders are amazingly supportive of each other, and so they're always willing and ready to collaborate, right? So it is something that is, I didn't know that it is unique to Grey Bruce because I've never worked outside of Grey Bruce, but it's really, really good to know that. Yeah. And just to follow up on what you said, Jacinda, I think what you were talking about your work, is a process, right? It's a continuous process. We started somewhere, and then as we develop resources or capacity, new things will unfold because newcomers are coming, immigrants are coming, or other people coming from, even people who are from Canada but moving up here. So the community is forever changing, and just building on the learning of previous projects and being sensitive of the needs. I think that's what you guys have been demonstrating all along. Just continue that process, and we can see that we're working towards filling the gap, making the gap closer and closer, and people are feeling more and more welcoming, right?
Yeah, and it's ever changing. And we realized when both economic development departments applied for the funding from the federal government, it was initiated through workforce, really and addressing the labor shortage. But in order to do so, there are other pieces that, like we said in the very beginning, it is a whole picture. And so it's not just a welcoming workplace, it's a welcoming community, which encompasses your workplace as well as your social integration and so on. So, it's ever evolving. Yeah. But there are a lot of pieces to creating a welcoming community. It's not just the first step of a job. It's only one piece of the puzzle. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and we need a lot of voices at the table, a lot of hands, and a lot of organizations and people to support that initiative. It's not just me or you or you. It's a collaborative effort, which is what GBLIP is.
Yeah. And currently, GBLIP has 66 council member organizations. So that is amazing to see, like, so many different stakeholders are interested in working together. So we can't take credits. We just provide a platform for people to collaborate, and it's amazing to see how many are interested and all working towards making this place welcoming for everybody, basically, right? Yeah. Okay, so that was all my questions, but I think to wrap up, I just have to maybe, what would you suggest to say an employer who is starting to think about how do they contribute to creating a welcoming community?
No, go ahead.
No, really. I would say first, employers really need to look outside the box. And I don't say work outside, but look outside the box. I think employers and organizations and the counties and so on, we've always worked in a certain direction, and the environment's changing. And I think that we also need to change the way we look at things. So as an employer, being able to see some of the barriers and or ask, like, have a conversation. If you do have, if we're looking at, let's say, a business or an employer, and they're looking to diversify their workplace, maybe they can reach out to Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership or reach out to Economic Development to kind of ask those questions that may not have been asked before. And I think coming to the table in a conversation, whether it's an employer roundtable or a committee meeting, asking different questions leads to different answers, leads to different solutions. So being open to those conversations is really important, and understanding what some of those barriers are in order for an employer, let's say, to be able to address them.
And you made some great points there, Jacinda, and it's also looking towards, I'll say, leaders within our communities that are already making great strides of ensuring that their workplace is welcoming in multiple different ways. The employers could be adopting those practices in their hiring practices, their retention practices, their support to what's happening in the community as well. We're seeing that. I won't say more and more, it's maybe more visual, more and more as we move forward, that employers are being more publicly aware and or sharing that they are open to, embracing newcomers, immigrants, different diversities, everything all inclusive in that nature, because they want to have a workplace that is inclusive of all. And it sounds redundant the way that I've said it, but I think there's a lot of truth to, it's kind of almost a domino effect that is, every step, there's another step that's happening, and it's growing more and more as we move forward.
Definitely, and that reminded me, when I was doing a previous project, my coworker, she was doing some work with employers, and sometimes I think at that time I think things are also changing now, but there's a confusion between equality and equity, right? So when employers are working with newcomers, it's not only providing equal opportunity, but it's equitable access to opportunity that we're looking at in order for them to have, say, career advancement, or to have better access to other like social resources or civic engagement opportunities. So that's one piece. I think it is also would be a good consideration, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And employers, it's going to take a little more. There is a crisis mode. They're in crisis mode, I would say. So they are more open to ideas. So this is the moment where we can provide some of those solutions and supports. But understanding that there is going to be some work you have to put in it, and whether you're looking at being able to look at equitable assets, like you mentioned, versus, equal assets, I guess. It takes more work and more effort in this moment, but that's the investment you're putting in for the outcome you're getting. So if you put more investment in now, there will be benefits, and there are benefits to a more diverse workforce, and that is really important around, the success of a business, whether it thrives, whether it expands, and so on. And, I think there's just more time, and there's an even better outcome in the end. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, so now if employers or other community stakeholders want to get a hold of you, how do they reach out?
Great question. All of our information is available on our websites, either through the county websites, through the investinbruce.ca website. So I feel we're pretty easy to get a hold of in that nature. Everything is on the public web.
Okay.
yeah, and I would say the same for Grey County, maybe more specifically our Made in Grey website, but if not, jacinda.rudolph@grey.ca, and also easy to reach out to Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, which involves both Pierre and I.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jacinda and Pierre, thank you so much for being with me today and giving us some really great insights. So if you are an employer or community stakeholders or community members who would like to find out more about how you can contribute to creating a welcoming community in order to benefit the economic development of the region or as a whole, the region as a whole, reach out to these good people.